The Ouagadougou Central Prison, once called Maison d'Arrêt et de Correction de Ouagadougou, MACO, was a crumbling relic of colonial architecture, overcrowded with more than 4 times its intended capacity. Inside, inmates slept in shifts due to lack of space. Disease festered, and food was often reduced to 1 meal a day. For decades, the prison system in Burkina Faso mirrored the decay of a society once held in the palm of foreign powers. Neglected, punitive, and void of rehabilitation, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, having taken power through a popular military transition, knew that a nation's greatness wasn't only measured by the strength of its army or GDP, but by how it treated its weakest, even those behind bars. In a televised address to the nation in early 2025, Captain Traoré declared, "We must not only free our land from neo-colonial control, we must free our people from the cycle of despair. Even prisoners must be given the chance to reclaim their dignity." The audience was stunned. Reforming prisons was rarely a headline in West Africa, but Traoré, a student of Thomas Sankara's ideals, believed in holistic liberation. With the stroke of a decree, the Programme de Réinsertion et de Production Pénitentiaire, PRPP, was born, a radical initiative to transform prisons into centers of production, education, and healing. MACO's outer walls were expanded to include arable farmland. Inmates were given the opportunity to work, voluntarily, on agricultural projects. They grew millet, sorghum, and vegetables that not only fed the prison, but also generated surplus for nearby communities. Work hours were fair, supervised, and protected. For every week of service in the fields, prisoners earned time off their sentence, modest wages, and learned sustainable farming methods they could take back to their villages. Soon, similar projects spread across Bobo-Dioulasso, Koudougou, and Dori, where once there was nothing but barbed wire and hopelessness. Now stood green gardens, carpentry workshops, and even tailoring classes. The government partnered with local businesses and NGOs to establish skill acquisition programs in welding, bricklaying, and computer literacy. For the first time, many inmates saw a future for themselves. On March 21, 2025, President Traoré granted clemency to over 1,000 inmates, mostly those serving time for petty, nonviolent offenses. Among them was Aissa Kabour, a mother of 2 who had been jailed for unpaid market debts. As she exited the prison gates, holding her 2 children close, she looked into the cameras and said, "This nation did not throw me away. It gave me a second chance. Captain Traoré has given me more than freedom, he gave me purpose." The stories poured in. Men who had been locked away for minor thefts were now creating furniture for schools. Young people who once roamed the streets in gangs were now poets and painters within walls that once broke them. International organizations took notice. The African Union praised the model as a beacon of restorative justice in the Sahel. Amnesty International, though cautious, commended the transparency of the program and urged other nations to learn from the example. However, criticism came too. Some Western outlets accused Traoré of using prison labor for state profit. But Burkina Faso's Minister of Justice responded, "We are not running sweatshops. We are cultivating souls. Our prisons are no longer dungeons, they are schools of hope." In April 2025, whispers emerged that the death penalty might be reinstated for the most heinous crimes: terrorism, treason, and ritual killings. Human rights groups expressed deep concern. Captain Traoré, in a fiery speech before the Transitional Assembly, clarified, "We will protect the sanctity of life, but those who destroy villages, butcher children, and betray our land will face justice, true justice." The debate raged, but what no one could deny was that Burkina Faso was charting its own path, free from foreign dictate, rooted in its own values. As the year went by, Burkina Faso's prisons had transformed into ecosystems of renewal. Recidivism dropped dramatically. Local communities began to integrate ex-prisoners with dignity, and the line between punishment and purpose grew clearer. Captain Traoré, walking through the once-feared MACO now turned center de Renaissance Sankariste, paused to watch a group of inmates planting mango trees. One of them, a young man with dreadlocks, looked up and said, "You made us believe again, Capitaine." Traoré nodded, the sun glinting off his military beret. "No man is truly free unless he frees others. That includes you." And so, under the Sahel sun, Burkina Faso's prisons became more than places of captivity. They became symbols of what Africa could become when it chose humanity over revenge. and restoration over ruin. Not all were pleased with the new reforms. Inside the Ministry of Justice, murmurs of dissent echoed through cold marble corridors. A handful of entrenched officials, those who had long profited from corrupt contracts for prison supplies, inflated budgets and ghost inmates, saw their grip loosen. The new transparency threatened them. One such man was Judge Séraphin Dembélé, an aging jurist with French legal training and deep connections to foreign investors. To him, Traoré's reforms were idealistic populism. He believed order came from fear, not compassion. In hushed meetings with foreign advisors, in air-conditioned rooms in Ouaga 2000, a plan was hatched to sabotage the prison reforms from within, discredit the program, and link it to extremist networks. They would leak falsified documents, stage unrest, and whisper treachery into the ears of the international press. But what they didn't count on was the loyalty Traoré had earned from the people, especially those once forgotten. Among the thousands transformed by the reforms was Almer Tambura, a former gang leader once feared across the Yatanga region. Arrested in 2023, he entered prison with bitterness but left in 2025 a changed man, a skilled carpenter, community preacher, and unofficial guardian of the new order. Traoré appointed him as a national ambassador for prisoner reintegration. Almer traveled village to village, telling his story, encouraging local leaders to hire ex-inmates and give them space to heal. But when Almer discovered that food meant for a new rehabilitation center in Gayayua had been diverted, sold on the black market by someone inside the ministry, he knew the battle wasn't over. He reported it directly to Traoré. "They're planting seeds of decay in our garden, Captain," he warned. Traoré's jaw tightened. The enemy wasn't only outside, it was within. In May 2025, just after dusk, flames erupted at the nearly completed Maison Nouvelle Rehabilitation Center in Gayayua. The center had been built with prison labor, designed to house 120 reformed inmates and train them in solar energy installation. Firefighters arrived too late. It was arson. International media rushed in. Critics called it a sign of failure. Opponents whispered of sabotage, and some foreign outlets gleefully painted it as proof that Africa's revolutionary models always burn. But what emerged from the ashes surprised them all. Within 48 hours, locals, former inmates, and even soldiers voluntarily came together. They began rebuilding brick by brick. In a viral video, a teenage girl whose father had helped build the center shouted, "You can burn the walls, but you cannot burn our will." The hashtag #Badir spread like wildfire across African social media. Traoré, emboldened by the people's support, called for a national convention for justice and reintegration, a Sankarist-style gathering of scholars, ex-prisoners, chiefs, imams, pastors, and activists. The goal, to rewrite the nation's correctional philosophy into the Constitution. The proposed amendment was revolutionary. Abolishment of life sentences for nonviolent offenses, mandatory vocational training for all inmates, National Day of Reintegration, honoring those who overcame prison and returned to serve, creation of an independent prisoners' ombudsman office. In the Assembly Hall, as the amendment was ratified, Traoré rose. "We are no longer jailing bodies, we are freeing minds, and no empire, foreign or domestic, can imprison a mind that has awakened." The crowd erupted. From Paris to Washington, from Dakar to Accra. Leaders watched, some mocked, others grew nervous. A self-reliant Burkina Faso, with rising literacy, lower recidivism, and a new generation of skilled artisans and farmers emerging from prison. That was dangerous, not to Burkina Faso, but to the systems that had kept nations like it dependent. Whispers of covert interference began. Anonymous donations to Burkina media outlets to amplify dissent. Shadow diplomats proposing new security partnerships, and think tanks producing reports discrediting the reforms. But Traoré was ready. He knew the second phase of the war was beginning, not just for land, or gold or power, but for the very soul of African justice.